the framework of the deal is in place. Obviously, compromise means compromise. That means that each side accepts things they don't want.
Accepting things that they don't want. That is the challenge now for the White House, as they have to take the deal that they cut with Republicans and sell it to Democrats.
Awkward. All right, Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Amy Walter.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest in politics. It's twitter.com/Rick Klein, twitter.com/Amy E. Walter, to my co-host who sings at the top of the show now.
Well, I'm trying. It's so good to have you back.
Great to be back.
Do you feel like you've done your duty now?
I have served society as a member of a jury in the District of Columbia.
Excellent. Were you one of 12 angry men? Or
we were very pleasant. Thank you very much.
All right. So we're going to start off with my first top line, and of course it's that tax war on Capitol Hill. The White House yesterday going to war, it seems, with the Democrats, the folks on their own side. The president very strong in his statements yesterday at the White House press conference. I think he used the word sanctimonious at one point to talk about his own party. Now the vice president going up today, 4 o'clock, 4:30 actually, to meet with the House Democrats, who are also very unhappy. Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer both coming out with statements yesterday suggesting this deal is far from done. I mean, Rick, we just heard from the president's advisor here, David Axelrod, saying basically the framework's done. So is there any room to compromise?
I mean, ostensibly not. I mean, you can around the edges, perhaps, but the major points are caked in right now. Democrats are not happy about it. What's unclear right now is whether they can do anything about it. And they, even though they control the House, they control the Senate, they are not likely to be able to influence the final outcome here. Intriguingly, though, Senator Jim DeMint of South Carolina, Republican Tea Party leader, has come out against this tax deal. If you have significant opposition on the Republican side, then it becomes a matter of tough vote counting, and then the Democrats can, Bernie Sanders and Jim DeMint work together all the time, as we know.
Actually, yes, it's the odd couple.
Indeed.
Continuing.
Next up today, Don't Ask dismissed. Well, that's still a question mark, but Don't Ask, Don't Tell looks like it's closer than ever to being repealed. Senator Mark Pryor, Democrat of Arkansas, one of 2 Democrats to vote against a repeal effort earlier in the year, now says he would support a repeal. You add to that 2 Republican senators who are on board, and you're getting very close to 60. They're not quite there, but there's a possibility of a key procedural vote tonight, as early as tonight in the Senate, that would advance this to the full Senate and then put it on the path to actual repeal as part of the defense bill. That would be a major moment, Amy, and it's kind of happening under the radar screen with all the other things that are going on right now, but this policy that's defined the military for the last 17 or 18 years could be gone. Well,
and it's also fascinating to see the Republicans from the Northeast, the ones that many Democrats say should get on board on the tax deal, are the ones that are coming on board on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I think what we're seeing, it's very interesting. On social issues, you're going to see moderate Republicans moving with Democrats, but on fiscal issues, they're going to stick together with the members of their own party. All right, and not finally, but finally for me, the final tally. We now hit the number 63. That's right, Republicans picked up 63 total seats this morning in New York's 1st congressional district, the final district where the vote count was still in some doubt. The Republican announced that he was not going to continue his fight for that, so that means that Tim Bishop continues to be there, and that means also just the number 63 may not mean a lot to a lot of people, but the last time we saw one party lose this many seats, you have to go back to 1938.
Before Top Line, even. And a side note to all of this, this means Alec Baldwin will not be a member of Congress anytime soon. He was looking forward to that East End Long Island district opening up. If it had opened up, he may run. Sorry, but
we just hope Jack Donaghy stays on his show.
Exactly. And finally today, Governor Dayton, the last unresolved governor's race in the nation, also resolved today. Mark Dayton will be the next governor of Minnesota, with Tom Emmer, the Republican candidate, conceding defeat. A total of 5 pickups for Republicans in gubernatorial races. And there's actually a side note in all of this. Tim Pawlenty, the governor of Minnesota, breathes a little bit of a sigh of relief. Under the state constitution, he would have had to stay in office into next year if this had been unresolved. Now we can get back to whatever else he does.
His book tour.
That's right, book tour.
That's what he needs to get back to. And it's also interesting to note this is the first time in 20 years that Democrats have been in the governorship.
I love it.
There.
I love it. We love firsts. And today, we promise you Rahul Grijalva, the Democratic congressman from Arizona. This is not Rahul Grijalva. Mr. Grijalva was called into votes, but Karen Travers, our own excellent White House reporter here at ABC, joins us. And Karen, this is an unusual press conference, to say the least, yesterday, partly because of the tone. This was a more combative president, I found, and combative with his own party. It seemed like this was a calculation.
Absolutely. This was a surprise announcement, and, you know, talking to people, it seemed like this might not have been on the schedule early in the morning, but they felt that they needed to do this. They needed the president to get out there and look tough, and he looked tougher as it went along. He started out, and it seemed like he got on a roll, and I was talking with several reporter friends, and everybody kept commenting that this was the president's Andrew Shepard moment. Remember from that amazing movie, The American President, where he just goes into the briefing room and just finally has had it and decides to really stand his ground. But I think that is interesting. It was against the Democrats. That's where the strongest words seem to be reserved for. And then later last night, putting out that video to supporters, I think this is the White House realizing this is not a fight necessarily with the Republicans. This is a unease, as Nancy Pelosi says, within the Democratic caucus. A lot of upset progressive activists who did a lot of work for President Obama in 2008.
So to me, what was most interesting was his decision not just to go after liberals, but then to really poke them in the eye by saying, this is the public option fight we're going off again. Do you think that that was just a slip, or do you think he wanted to actually make that point?
I think he wanted to make that point. I think there's a little bit of a suck it up. We're trying to do something. Compromise has to happen. You can't get everything you want if we're going to try and push through a big agenda. We want to tackle the larger issues. He seems more willing to concede on some of the smaller points, but for many people in the Democratic caucus, these aren't smaller points. These are big things. And yes, you do have to put some things aside to get something across the finish line, but I think they're sick of being the ones it's always at their expense.
And the White House, of course, thinks about how they frame the president in all of this. This seemed like a declaration of independence from the president, and for independence in particular, to say, you know what, liberals, we love you, but we don't need you right now. That's not where the action is. The action's in the middle, and with a broad public, they may get behind a deal like this, even though it means sacrificing a core principle.
They're looking at those exit polls that we all poured over in November, and that was where the president's party was having problems of losing independents who either sat home and didn't vote or did not vote for the Democratic candidates. I think they're figuring out that we know that they'll show up. We know that the progressives and the left side of this party are still going to show up. That's a calculated risk, of course, going into the next presidential election, but I think it's one that they're willing to gamble.
How hard of a job does Vice President Biden have today talking to Democrats? I mean, he definitely drew the short straw here. And can he appease this group? And I mean, he has relationships here that the president.
That's why they say he was part of this ticket, because of those relationships that he had, those decades of experience up on Capitol Hill. I would love to know what Joe Biden's father would say about this. You know, he always says, "My father has a saying." My dad has a saying. There's got to be a Joe Biden's father saying that could be really applicable to all of this. But he does have a tough job. He has to go up there, but he's also kind of the punching bag on this. I think he's willing to be the one that'll say, "Go ahead, give it. I know you're upset. Save this for the closed-door meetings. Please don't go out there on cable. Please don't go out there and interview."
But isn't there something to be said about the fact that maybe they should have sent him up earlier? Why did they send him out after it's done?
Smooth things over.
Why didn't they send him? Do we know anything about that?
Not clear about that, but that is a good point.
And of course, Mr. Biden, the senior Mr. Biden's quotes, he's actually said more since he died than before. It's really incredible. But I want to ask you, Karen, briefly, because you got to go on the president's trip to Afghanistan last week. Not a lot of reporters get to do that. Certainly not a lot of members of the public get to do that, because it's all cloaked in secrecy and there's a small pool. What was the experience like? And you didn't get much lead time, and all of a sudden you're flying overseas with the president.
Right, about 36 hours, 48 hours of lead time, and we weren't allowed to talk about it, of course. And we get there. There's 13 reporters on the plane. What we thought was going to be the schedule, we thought we'd be there for 6 hours, taking a helicopter, motorcade to meet with President Karzai. Weather changed that schedule around, and everything ended up being at Bagram Air Base. But it was a frantic 3.5 hours. It was a way for President Obama to come over there and have that photo op with the troops. As much as we wanted to ask about the relationship with Karzai, about the way forward in Afghanistan, the White House kept stressing, this is about the troops. It's Christmas time. This is the hardest time of the year for people to be away from their families. The president wanted to surround himself. One thing that you maybe didn't see, because the cables probably weren't taking it, he does a rope line, starts shaking hands with all the soldiers. He did that for about 20 minutes. He didn't want to go away. He wanted to shake every single hand there. I think he really understood how much it meant.
All right. Karen Travers, White House reporter at ABC News. Really appreciate it.